Welcome to Bedtime Sleep Stories for Grown-Ups by Beezy Honey.net. I hope you are settled in for the night and are ready to go on a journey of deep and relaxing sleep. We've put these special bedtime sleep stories for adults for anyone out there dealing with insomnia, sleep problems, sleep deprivation, anxiety, pain, or any other kind of issues preventing you from getting enough sleep and being fully rested and ready to take on the day. We truly hope these stories can help you achieve the elusive, deep, and uninterrupted sleep. Please enjoy this episode and consider subscribing to our channel to support and help the spread of these sleep stories to people all over the world with the same issues that brought you to this video. Thank you for your support and a deep and uninterrupted sleep to you tonight. Let's begin. Chapter 20. The Dawn of a New Era. The rain drizzled against the cold glass windows of the office as Ethan stared out, lost in thoughts. The city below was awash with streams of light from the traffic and city buildings, but to him the city looked different. Not just a mass of steel and concrete anymore, but a living entity with its pulse. He turned away from the window to face the bustling office. The team was busy working on their projects, their eyes reflecting the glow of the computer screens. A sense of pride washed over him. They had come so far from being a group of like-minded individuals to a team that had surpassed all expectations. They had proven that unity and perseverance could defy even the mightiest of odds. "Ethan," a voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned to see Sandra approaching, a smile lighting up her face. "The reports are in." Ethan's heart pounded in anticipation. The whole team had been waiting for these results. The future of their project hinged on it. Sandra handed him the file. Ethan hesitated, a strange mix of fear and hope fluttering in his chest. After a moment of silence, he finally took a deep breath and opened the folder. He glanced at the first page, and suddenly, time seemed to freeze. His eyes scanned the document, and slowly, a smile started to spread on his face. The results were not just positive, they were far better than they could ever have anticipated. The project was a success. As Ethan shared the good news, a wave of applause and cheers filled the office. The team's jubilation was infectious. Their hard work, determination, and unity had paid off. This victory wasn't just about the success of their project. It was a testament to their spirit, resilience, and trust in each other. But amidst the celebrations, Ethan's gaze returned to the glass window. He looked out at the city once more, the city that was about to witness the dawn of a new era thanks to their efforts. However, despite their victory, Ethan knew that their journey was far from over. Their success had opened up new challenges they needed to address to ensure the longevity of their project. One lesson that Ethan had learned from his experience was that victory was not the end, but just the beginning of a new set of trials. This lesson, he knew, was something that each of his team members had also come to understand. It was the fuel that would keep them moving forward, facing whatever challenges came their way. However, as he stared out the window, a sense of uncertainty crept in. They were stepping into unknown territory, and although they had each other, the path ahead was still shrouded in darkness. But one thing Ethan was sure about was that they were ready to face it together. As Ethan stood there reflecting on their success and the journey that lay ahead, his eyes caught a glint of something on the horizon. It was the first hint of dawn, a sliver of light cutting through the darkness. It was a new day, a symbol of their new beginning. A quiet resolve settled within him. They had weathered storms, faced countless trials, and they would do so again, together. His gaze swept back to his team, his family. They were chatting excitedly, their faces glowing with the thrill of their achievement. Ethan felt a surge of gratitude for each one of them. Each person in the room had contributed significantly to their victory. It wasn't just the skills or the intelligence they brought to the table. It was their spirit, their drive, their willingness to give their all for the sake of the project. "Ethan," Sandra called out again, this time her voice softer. She was holding out a glass of champagne to him, her eyes sparkling with happiness. "A toast," she said, "to us, to our victory, and to the journey ahead." The sound of clinking glasses echoed around the room as everyone joined in the toast. Ethan felt a warm sense of camaraderie fill him. They were more than just a team. They were a community, a group of people bound by a common goal and a shared passion. As he took a sip of his champagne, Ethan realized another profound truth. No matter how daunting the challenge, no matter how unpredictable the journey, as long as they had each other, they could conquer anything. It was a lesson that he would carry with him, a guiding principle that would see them through the trials that lay ahead. The first rays of the sun began to filter through the windows, casting a warm, golden glow on the office. The cityscape outside seemed to bask in the light, its steel and concrete structures glinting brightly. It was the dawn of a new era, the start of a new chapter in their lives. The celebrations carried on into the early hours of the day, laughter and cheers filling the office. As the first rays of the sun painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, the excitement slowly started to ebb, replaced by a profound sense of satisfaction and anticipation for what was to come. As the members of his team started to trickle out of the office, each one wishing him well and sharing a parting toast, Ethan was left alone in the room, the echo of their laughter and the faint scent of champagne his only company. He gazed out of the window at the city bathed in the soft morning light, the skyscrapers standing tall against the brightening sky, their silhouettes slowly becoming more distinct as the sun continued to rise. Despite the victory they had just achieved, Ethan knew that the journey was far from over. There were new challenges to face, new horizons to explore, but he also knew that whatever the future held, they were prepared to face it. Their victory had proved that they had the skill, the determination, and most importantly, the unity to overcome any obstacle that came their way. In this moment of quiet reflection, Ethan was struck by a profound realization. The journey was not about the destination, but about the steps they took to get there. Each trial they faced, each challenge they overcame, was a stepping stone on the path to success. The real victory was not in achieving their goal, but in the process of striving towards it. It was a lesson that Ethan vowed to remember. It was not the outcome, but the journey that truly mattered. And as long as they approached each challenge with determination, unity, and a belief in their abilities, they could not truly fail. With that thought in mind, Ethan turned away from the window, his gaze falling on the empty office. The room was quiet now, the celebrations of the night a distant memory, but the spirit of victory lingered, a testament to their success and a promise of the achievements yet to come. As Ethan moved around the office, he began to clear the remnants of their celebrations, a sense of peace washing over him. Every empty bottle, every discarded streamer was a tangible reminder of their victory, of the joy they had shared. The office, now silent and serene, was a stark contrast to the frenzy of activity that had been there a few hours before, and yet it felt right. It felt like a new beginning, a clean slate. Just then, Ethan's phone buzzed, breaking the silence. He picked it up and was greeted by the smiling faces of his family, his wife and his children on a video call. Their joyful voices filled the office as they congratulated him on his success. They had been with him every step of the way, their unwavering support a source of strength in his most challenging moments. And now they shared in his victory, their pride and joy reflecting in their eyes. As Ethan talked to his family, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. He was grateful for the team he had, for the support of his family, and for the opportunities that had led him to this point. He realized that every step of his journey, every challenge he had faced, had led him to this moment, and he wouldn't trade it for anything. But even as he celebrated his success, Ethan knew that he had a responsibility. He had a responsibility to his team, to lead them with integrity and honesty. He had a responsibility to his family, to be a role model for his children. And he had a responsibility to himself, to continue learning, growing, and striving for success. The challenges they had overcome were not the end, but the beginning. A new journey lay ahead, filled with new opportunities and challenges. But no matter what the future held, Ethan knew that they were prepared to face it. They had proved that they could overcome adversity, that they could achieve their goals. And as long as they had that belief, they could accomplish anything. This realization, this profound lesson, was something that Ethan vowed to carry with him. He realized that success was not just about achieving your goals, but about the journey, the process, the lessons learned along the way. And as long as they continued to learn, to grow, to strive for success, they would never truly fail. And with that thought in mind, Ethan ended the call, his family's smiling faces lingering in his mind. He looked around the office one last time, taking in the scene of their victory, the promise of the future. He moved towards his desk, picked up a small, framed picture that held a special place in his heart. It was an old photograph of him and his father standing in front of their family bookstore. That humble beginning, the countless hours spent reading books and understanding the business under his father's patient guidance, had been the catalyst for his successful venture into the e-commerce world. The bookstore was long gone, replaced by a towering skyscraper. However, the memory and values it instilled in him still lived on, serving as a constant reminder of where he had come from. As he looked at the photograph, a wave of nostalgia washed over him, a gentle reminder of his roots. He was a successful entrepreneur, but he was also that curious little boy, fascinated by the world of books. Putting the frame back down, he opened his laptop, his fingers dancing over the keys as he began to write a letter to his team. This was not a formal corporate communication. Rather, it was a heartfelt letter of gratitude, appreciation, and inspiration. He thanked each team member for their contribution and acknowledged their hard work. He encouraged them to remember the lessons they had learned, the challenges they had overcome, and the strength they had demonstrated. He wrote about the importance of staying grounded, about the need to stay committed to their values, and to continue learning. He wrote about the importance of celebrating victories, however small they might be, and the need to continue supporting one another, not just as colleagues, but as a family. As he finished writing, he took a moment to read it, each word resonating with sincerity. He hoped that the letter would serve as a source of motivation and encouragement for his team, a reminder of their collective strength and potential. His fingers hovered over the send button, a mix of emotions swirling within him. This was more than just an email. It was a symbolic act, a testament to their journey together, and a promise of what lay ahead. With a deep breath, he clicked send, his message now on its way to his team. While his message was being sent to thousands of his team members around the globe, he decided to take a walk down the hallway. He passed several of his employees who looked up from their screens, surprised and pleased to see him. He made it a point to know everyone's name, a small gesture that meant a lot to his team members. He exchanged pleasantries, listened to their project updates, and thanked them for their hard work. As he continued his walk, he came upon a space that was particularly special to him, the company library. Although the company had grown to embrace digital technology, he had always insisted on maintaining a physical library, a sanctuary of books, a legacy from his father. It was a constant reminder of their humble origins. In the library, he picked up a worn-out copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, one of the many books that had shaped his thoughts and perspectives during his formative years. As he flipped through the pages, he couldn't help but think about the profound lessons the book had taught him. As Atticus Finch said, "You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it." His father had always emphasized the importance of empathy, both in life and in business. Now, as a leader, he understood the true value of that lesson. In his pursuit of success, he had always strived to understand his customers, employees, and competitors. He believed that his ability to empathize was a significant factor behind his success. In a world dominated by data and analytics, it was easy to lose sight of the human element. It was easy to forget that behind every data point was a human being with dreams, challenges, and emotions. He had made sure his company never forgot that. His father's lessons and Atticus Finch's wisdom converged in his mind, strengthening his resolve to continue steering his company with empathy and understanding at its core. A quiet smile played on his lips as he put the book back on the shelf. He was reminded once again of the profound impact of his beginnings, the timeless wisdom of literature, and the invaluable lessons from his father. He returned to his office with a renewed sense of purpose. As he sat behind his desk, he glanced at the clock. It was almost time for the global team meeting, the first one since his broadcast message. He knew his decision would spark questions, doubts, and possibly resistance, but he was prepared. The digital clock hit the hour, and the screen on his desk flickered to life. Thousands of faces from all around the world appeared, a testament to the scale and diversity of his company. His heart pounded in his chest as he began to address the meeting. He spoke of his decision, the rationale behind it, and how it aligned with the company's ethos. He stressed the importance of empathy in their work, drawing parallels between their mission and the lessons from To Kill a Mockingbird. He acknowledged that it wouldn't be easy, that it would require effort and understanding from everyone. He also acknowledged the potential drawbacks and challenges, assuring his team that they would tackle them together. Silence filled the virtual room after he concluded his speech. Then, slowly, applause began to echo through the speakers. It started with a few hands, then grew to a wave that swept through the virtual room. He looked at the faces on the screen, some surprised, some thoughtful, others smiling and nodding. He knew then that he had made the right decision. After the meeting, he leaned back in his chair, exhausted but satisfied. He had taken a risk, made a hard decision, and most importantly, stood by his beliefs. The lesson was clear. The ability to understand and share the feelings of others isn't just a human virtue, but a crucial element of effective leadership and business. As he gazed out of his office window at the city lights, he couldn't help but wonder what the future would bring. His decision would undoubtedly set off a chain of events, challenges, and victories alike. But whatever came their way, he knew they were ready to face it. A few days later, he was walking through the busy corridors of his company, watching his employees at work. Everywhere he looked, he saw the tangible effects of his decision. In the design department, he saw teams discussing not just about color palettes and visuals, but also about how to make their products more user-friendly and accessible for all. In the coding department, developers weren't just squashing bugs or optimizing algorithms, they were also considering how their technology would affect society and the world at large. In the marketing department, the conversation was about not just catchy taglines and campaign strategies, but also about corporate responsibility and ethical branding. He saw evidence of empathy in action. His employees were engaged, enthusiastic, and inspired. This wasn't just about doing a job anymore. It was about making a difference, about creating something meaningful and beneficial. A profound sense of pride swelled within him as he watched his company transform. He had planted a seed of change, and it was beautiful to see it grow. Back in his office, he found a letter on his desk. The handwriting was familiar. It was from Harper Lee, the author of To Kill a Mockingbird. She had heard about his decision and its impact on his company, and had decided to write him a personal note. As he read her heartfelt words of appreciation and encouragement, he realized the magnitude of what he had done. He hadn't just changed the course of his company, he had sent ripples of change out into the world. He realized that even the most significant changes start with a single brave decision. But there was still one last thing he needed to do. He called his team together for a meeting. His employees filed into the room, curious to know what their boss had to say. They had been noticing the changes in their working environment, and overall, they were responding positively to the new, value-driven approach. He started off by expressing his gratitude for their cooperation and dedication. He explained his decision to them in detail and his reason behind it. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He admitted that this new path would be challenging and that they might face resistance from stakeholders or competitors. But, he added, that's what made it worth pursuing. He saw nods of agreement, smiles, even tears. The room was filled with a sense of unity and purpose. He realized he had been worried about their reactions unnecessarily. They were all here because they believed in what they were doing. They were here because they wanted to be a part of something bigger than themselves. They were here to make a difference. One by one, they shared their thoughts and feelings about the changes. They expressed their support for his decision and offered their ideas on how they could implement it even better. They were not just his employees now, they were his partners in this mission. The profound lesson he learned that day was about the power of a united purpose. He learned that when people believe in what they are doing, when they know that their work is contributing to a greater cause, they become unstoppable. They don't just do their jobs, they put their heart and soul into it, and that makes all the difference. At the end of the meeting, he felt a weight lifting off his shoulders. He realized he was no longer alone in this journey. He had a team, a family, that shared his vision and was ready to stand by him. But just as everyone was about to leave, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his heart skipped a beat. It was a news alert. "The stock market has crashed," it read. John's heart pounded in his chest as he stared at the screen of his computer. The stock market had crashed, and with it the fortunes of many businesses. including their own. The numbers seemed to blur together, a kaleidoscope of red that sent chills down his spine. The fear was palpable, a dark cloud that had descended upon the office, smothering the energy that once thrived there. John's gaze shifted to the photo frame on his desk, a candid shot of his team laughing during a company outing. He remembered the warmth of that day, the camaraderie, and the hope that had infused them all. It was that memory that steered him from the precipice of despair. "Stay strong," he whispered to himself, pushing away from his desk. A leader is defined not by how they revel in success, but how they navigate through the storm, and this was a storm unlike any other they had faced before. The conference room was a simmering pot of anxiety as he stepped in. The chatter ceased immediately, every eye in the room focusing on him. He cleared his throat, his gaze scanning the faces before him. "We have a situation," he began, his voice echoing across the silent room. He relayed the news of the crash, the stark reality of their predicament laid bare. The room fell eerily silent once again, the air heavy with dread. Questions followed, thrown at him like rapid fire, and John did his best to answer with as much certainty as he could muster. There was fear in the eyes of his team, but there was determination as well. This was a test, a cruel and unforgiving one, but they were a team. They had weathered storms before. This would be no different. Returning to his cabin, John was all too aware of the gravity of the situation. The question was not just about the survival of the company, but about the livelihoods of all those who were a part of it. And yet, amid the fear and the uncertainty, he found himself grounded, resolved. Turning his attention to the financial reports, John began to formulate a plan. He pored over the data, sifting through the statistics and analytics, his mind working overtime. The night stretched into the early hours of the morning, but fatigue was an afterthought. A spark of an idea slowly began to form, a risky venture, but it was a chance they had to take. As dawn began to break, John felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't much, but it was a start. After a quick shower and a strong cup of coffee, John walked into the office again, his heart set on his newfound plan. The office was quieter now, the fear of the previous day seeping into the walls. Still, work had to be done, and John was more determined than ever to not let despair claim their spirits. He called a meeting, gathering his team once again in the conference room. As he outlined his plan, he saw the uncertainty in their eyes. It was a gamble, a Hail Mary, but it was better than doing nothing at all. The road ahead was going to be tough, he warned them, full of hard decisions and sacrifices, but they were fighters, and they wouldn't go down without a fight. As the meeting drew to a close, John saw a spark ignite in their eyes. It was faint, but it was there. Fear was replaced with resolve, uncertainty with determination. They would face this together, he thought, feeling a sense of pride wash over him. Over the next few weeks, they worked tirelessly. Sleep was minimal, the pressure was mounting, and the stakes were high. But with each passing day, they moved a step closer to their goal. John saw his team stepping up, pushing their boundaries, fighting for their survival. In the middle of it all, John found himself standing in the eye of the storm. His fear was now replaced with a quiet confidence. He learned that in the face of adversity, the strength of a team is tested. It's not about how hard the storm hits, but about how well you can withstand it, how you can leverage it to become stronger. Despite the looming crisis, John found himself growing, both as a leader and as a person. He learned the importance of resilience, the value of perseverance. He saw firsthand the power of unity and the strength of shared belief. As he stood at the precipice of their battle, looking at the faces of his team, their determination lighting up the room, John realized that this journey, as painful and as challenging as it was essential. It was a reminder of their shared purpose, their collective strength, their will to survive. And as he gazed out of the window at the breaking dawn, he understood that every storm eventually runs out of rain, every night breaks into day. This too shall pass, he thought. They had a tough road ahead, but they were ready for the challenge. They were fighters, and they wouldn't go down without a fight. The following months were a whirlwind for John and his team. Each day felt like a battle, and each night brought a short, fleeting peace before the dawn of another day full of challenges. The office became their second home, the cubicles and conference rooms their battlefields, and their companions in arms, their new family. The initial days were the hardest. There were setbacks and roadblocks, technological barriers that seemed impossible to cross, but each hurdle only strengthened their resolve. They learned from their failures, and with each fall, they got back up stronger, armed with new knowledge and ideas. John found himself in the middle of this whirlwind, trying to be the anchor for his team, the steadfast captain steering his ship through the storm. He watched as they worked tirelessly, watched their despair at each setback, their joy at each small victory, and it fueled him, gave him the energy to keep going, to keep pushing. One evening, after an especially grueling day, John stayed back after everyone else had left. The office was unusually silent, a stark contrast to the usual symphony of keyboard clicks, hushed conversations, and ringing phones. He found himself walking aimlessly through the empty cubicles, past empty chairs and desks strewn with the remnants of a day's work. He stopped in front of the huge glass window, staring out at the cityscape. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of red and gold, casting long shadows and bathing the city in a warm, soft light. It was a beautiful sight, a moment of peace amidst the chaos. In that moment of solitude, he realized how far they had come. He saw the faces of his team, their determination and relentless spirit, and he felt a surge of pride. He thought about their journey, their shared struggles and victories, and he knew that no matter what the outcome, they had already won. In their struggle, they had found something precious: unity in diversity, strength in adversity, and the ability to rise above the odds. This realization was profound and humbling. The battles they fought together were not just for survival, but for something much greater. They were battles for understanding, for growth, and for innovation. They were battles that brought out the best in them and taught them lessons they would carry with them long after this mission was over. John sighed deeply, letting the gravity of his thoughts settle within him. For a moment, he allowed himself to be caught up in the magic of the twilight hour, taking comfort in the stillness that pervaded the now vacant office. Yet, his mind kept going back to the massive task they had ahead. The mission was far from over. He had yet to lead his team through the most challenging phase of their journey. Moving away from the window, he walked back to his office, sitting in his chair, the leather groaning under his weight. His eyes wandered over the photos on his desk, images of happier times with his family, the memories providing him a sense of solace. Those photos were his reminder, his motivation. He was doing all of this for them, for a better future, for a better world. As the sun finally disappeared over the horizon, he pulled up his sleeves and switched on his computer. It was time to plan for tomorrow. It was time to prepare for the battle ahead. Weeks turned into months. They were making progress, but the journey was uphill. The team encountered obstacles that tested their strength and determination. Some days it seemed like they took one step forward only to take 2 steps back. The strain was palpable, visible in the tired lines etching deeper into everyone's faces. Still, amidst the tumult, there was a sense of unity, a camaraderie that only adversity could build. They worked together, laughed together, and even shared their disappointments together. It was this bond, this unspoken pact of standing by each other, that held them together, pushing them to strive harder. One morning, as the first rays of sun trickled into the office, John noticed a change. The air was buzzing with a strange, invigorating energy. He looked around to find the source, only to see his team deeply engrossed in their work, a spark of determination in their eyes that wasn't there before. There was a new hope, a new vitality that made the office feel alive, and in that moment, he knew they were on the cusp of something significant. Hours later, in the silence of the office, they finally achieved their breakthrough. The room erupted in cheers, tears of joy were shed, and the weight of months of stress seemed to lift. John found himself at the center of it all, his heart full of gratitude and pride for his team. He could see the finish line now. The dream they had all been chasing was within reach. But their journey was far from over. The final battle still awaited them, the climax of their mission that would determine their destiny. And as the sun set, painting the sky with a promise of a new dawn, John prepared himself and his team for the challenge that awaited them. He had to lead them to victory. He had to ensure their hard work, their sacrifices, did not go in vain. The storm was coming, and he was ready to face it head-on. John rose early the next day. With a feeling of quiet determination, he steeled himself for the challenges ahead. Today was the day they would put their plan into action. The stakes were high, and the margin for error non-existent. His heart pounded with anticipation and fear, but he knew he had to remain calm and composed, for his team looked up to him for leadership and strength. His routine, usually mundane and mechanical, felt different that morning. The coffee tasted stronger, the cool breeze more invigorating, and even the city seemed to stand in hushed anticipation. With one last look at his reflection in the mirror, he made a silent promise to himself. Today, he would fight with everything he had. The office was already bustling with activity when John arrived. The team, though weary from months of relentless work, radiated an air of excitement and resolve. The shared sense of purpose was electrifying. This was the day they had been preparing for, and everyone was ready to give it their all. The morning was spent in hurried preparations. Every detail was checked and double-checked. Plans were reviewed, strategies were discussed, and potential outcomes anticipated. The atmosphere was tense, yet the team worked with an efficiency and synergy that had been honed over the past months. As the hours passed, John felt a growing sense of pride. He watched his team, once a disparate group of individuals, now work together with unwavering focus and unyielding resolve. They had become a unit, each member as essential as the other. They had weathered storms together, and now they were ready to face their biggest challenge yet. John called for a final team meeting. As they gathered around, he could see the anticipation and nervousness in their eyes. He knew he had to instill confidence and rally their spirits. He addressed the team, his words echoing in the silent room. Today we face our greatest challenge. Today we make our mark. Remember, it's not about one person. It's about all of us together. We're a team, and together we can achieve the impossible. As the day wore on, the tension escalated. The clock was ticking, and every passing minute brought them closer to their moment of reckoning. The office was a flurry of activity, as each team member performed their tasks with an almost frenzied concentration. John spent his day overseeing the operation, ensuring that every cog in their intricate machinery worked smoothly. He walked around the office, helping where he could, resolving issues, and offering encouragement. Despite the weight on his shoulders, he carried himself with an air of confidence, and this unspoken strength seemed to buoy the spirits of his team. In the midst of the chaos, John received a call from Martha. Her words of encouragement and her unwavering faith in him gave him an added boost of determination. As he listened to her voice, he was reminded of all the sacrifices they had made to reach this point, and of all the dreams that rested on the success of their mission. It was not just about him or his team anymore. It was about all the lives that they would impact with their success. As dusk settled, the office lights burned bright. The team was making their final preparations, and John could feel the building anticipation. This was it. The day they had worked for was finally here. Just as the clock struck midnight, they initiated their plan. John took one last look around the office. The faces around him, usually so lively and jovial, were stern and focused. The room was silent save for the hum of the computers and the low murmurs of his team. It was time to put their months of hard work to the test. As their plan rolled into action, each moment was filled with an acute sense of anticipation. John, at the helm of operations, kept an eye on every movement, every decision taken. His focus was unerring. The result of their months-long endeavor hung in the balance, and there was no room for mistakes. The minutes turned into hours, and as they watched the progress of their operation, there was a sense of cautious optimism. The plan was working. The steps they had so meticulously chalked out were falling into place. In the middle of this intense vigil, John's phone buzzed. It was Martha. Her voice, filled with anxious anticipation, echoed his own feelings. She offered words of support, which he took to heart. He realized how far they had come, how their lives had changed, and the potential future that lay before them. He thought about their journey, the ups and downs, the failures, and the triumphs. And amidst this reflection, a profound lesson came to him, that the value of perseverance is incomparable. Despite the numerous challenges they faced, their relentless drive had brought them to this momentous day. Their journey reminded him that sometimes the process is as valuable, if not more, than the result itself. "Stay strong, John. We're almost there," Martha said, her voice a gentle whisper in the charged silence of the room. John took a deep breath, and his gaze fell on his team, all working tirelessly, the weight of their collective hopes and dreams fueling their determination. "Thank you, Martha. We'll make it," he responded, his voice filled with resolve. Yet even as the hope surged within him, there was a prickling sense of foreboding that he couldn't shake off. In the complex world of cybersecurity, nothing was ever entirely predictable. Just as he was about to return to his screen, the room plunged into darkness. A sense of panic was immediate in the darkness. The hum of the machines had died out. The only source of light was the glow of their emergency exit signs, casting an eerie green hue over the room. "What happened?" one of the team members yelled out, his voice echoing in the sudden silence. John's heart pounded in his chest. This was the foreboding feeling he had been sensing. He took a moment to gather himself, drawing on years of experience and leadership. This was not the time to panic. "We've lost power," he responded calmly, trying to inject a sense of order amidst the confusion. "I need everyone to stay calm. Our backup generators should kick in any moment now." As if on cue, the backup generators whirred into life, the machines hummed again, and the room was bathed in a soft, fluorescent light. There was a collective sigh of relief from the team, but John knew better. The blackout wasn't a mere power failure, it was a deliberate move. He moved towards his workstation, his eyes on the screen. As the system rebooted, he tried to trace the origin of the power cut, and then he saw it, an infiltration into their system, a hacking attempt. He felt a chill run down his spine. The realization dawned on him that their operation had been compromised, and they were under attack. A profound thought hit him in that moment. In their quest to secure their own systems, they had not considered the extent of the enemy's resources. Their ambition had perhaps made them overlook the fact that every fortress, no matter how strong, has a weak point. It was a humbling realization, and one that he would carry forward. But there was no time to dwell on the lesson. They were at war, and their fortress was under siege. It was time to defend it. Suddenly, an alert popped up on his screen, the sign of a new incoming message. The sender was unknown, and the subject line read, "Checkmate." John's fingers hovered over the keyboard, a sense of dread filling the air around him. His heart pounded in his chest as he opened the email. The message was concise and alarming. "You've lost." John stared at the screen, a sense of despair washing over him. He had devoted his entire career to this mission, and now it all seemed to be crumbling before his eyes. The room around him felt still as he pondered the implications of the situation. There was a profound realization in that moment. In every battle, defeat is a possibility. It's how one responds to defeat that defines their character. John refused to let this be the end. With renewed determination, he began to devise a plan. His fingers started typing rapidly, issuing commands to his team, and outlining the emergency protocols. "Initiate lockdown sequence. Secure all classified data. We are under attack," he messaged across the network. But even as he sent the instructions, he knew that their enemy was steps ahead of them. The power outage, the system infiltration, the threatening email, it all pointed to a well-executed and planned attack. John's heart pounded in his chest as he considered their options. Time was running out, and they needed to act fast. Just as he was about to give his next command, the room plunged into darkness again. This time, even the backup generators didn't come back on. The sudden silence was eerie and filled with foreboding. But then something unexpected happened. A light flickered at the far end of the room, revealing a figure. It was Elizabeth, holding a small emergency torch. "I think I know a way out," she said, her voice echoing in the silent room. "But we need to act now." John looked at her, his heart filled with a glimmer of hope. Maybe they had lost a battle, but the war wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. Elizabeth's voice broke through the stifling silence, pulling John back to the present. He nodded, signaling for the rest of the team to gather around. They huddled close, eyes turned expectantly towards Elizabeth. "The blueprint of this facility shows an old service tunnel, not on the digital maps," she explained, her voice steady in the darkness. "It hasn't been used for years, but if we can find it, it should lead us to the exterior." "But what about the lockdown?" one of the team members asked. "Won't we be trapped in the facility?" Elizabeth shook her head. "The service tunnel was designed before the modern security systems were implemented. If it's still accessible, we can bypass the lockdown." Without the convenience of their computer systems, they relied on Elizabeth's memory of the blueprints she had studied when she joined the team. It was a risk, but it was the only chance they had. They moved quietly through the darkness, the beam from Elizabeth's torch their only guide. It felt like they were wading through a nightmare, but John was consumed by a strange feeling of determination. It was as if their current predicament had cut through his earlier feelings of defeat, leaving only a singular focus: survival. Finally, they found the entrance to the service tunnel. It was hidden behind a seemingly innocent maintenance door, but the dust and cobwebs revealed its disuse. The tunnel was narrow and stifling. As they filed through, John couldn't help but reflect on how their high-tech operation had been reduced to this primal state of flight. It felt like a journey back through time, a return to the most basic instinct of survival. They moved through the tunnel in silence, each absorbed in their own thoughts. Despite their grim circumstances, John couldn't help but appreciate the quiet determination of his team. They had faced an unimaginable situation with courage and resilience. They emerged from the tunnel to find the dawn breaking. The sight of the rising sun casting its golden rays over the desolate landscape felt like a symbol of hope amidst their dark predicament. They had survived the night, and now they had a new day to face their challenges. John turned to face his team, their faces etched with exhaustion, but alight with the resolve. He couldn't deny the gravity of their situation, but he also couldn't suppress a sense of pride. They were down, but they were not defeated. It was then that John realized the profound lesson that their situation had imparted. No matter how advanced or secure their systems were, they were still vulnerable. But it wasn't their technology that would save them. It was their unity, their resolve, and their courage. With a new day ahead of them, they prepared to face their enemies. The war was far from over. John gazed at the vast landscape stretching before them. Though exhausted and battered, he couldn't afford to let his guard down. He turned back to face his team, ready to inspire hope and resilience. "Our journey has brought us far from where we began," John began, his voice carrying in the quiet morning. "We have witnessed horrors and withstood trials that no one should ever have to endure. Yet here we stand, united by a shared resolve." He paused, looking at each of his team members. Their faces were etched with exhaustion and determination, the effects of their harrowing ordeal evident in their hardened expressions. Yet, in their eyes, John saw hope, a flame that refused to be extinguished, no matter how fierce the storm. "I won't lie to you," he continued. "The road ahead is not easy. We have enemies on our trail, waiting for us to slip up, to falter. But let me remind you that we have something they don't: unity. We have stood by each other through the darkest of nights and emerged stronger. We are not just a team, we are a family, and no force in the universe can break that bond." As John spoke, he saw a flicker of resolve in the eyes of his team. His words were simple, yet they carried the weight of their shared experiences, the challenges they had overcome together. It was a stark reminder of their strength, their resilience, and the undying spirit of humanity. "The challenges we face are formidable, but not insurmountable," John concluded. "We will stand our ground, we will fight, not because we seek violence, but because we seek peace. We will not let fear dictate our actions. We will rise, united against our adversaries, because we are survivors, and survivors never back down." As the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the desolate landscape, John couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. They had been through hell and back, but they were still standing. Their spirit remained unbroken. In the face of overwhelming adversity, they had found strength in unity, and as long as they stood together, there was no challenge too great, no enemy too powerful. As long as they had each other, they could face whatever came their way. As they prepared to face the new day, a sense of solemn resolve filled the air. There was no denying the challenges they faced, but neither could they deny their shared determination to overcome them. And so, with the rising sun as their beacon, they set out to face their destiny. Their journey was far from over, and their fight was just beginning. We've now come to the end of this chapter. Please stay tuned for the next chapter of this story to be published in the upcoming days. In the meantime, please enjoy the sleep music that's about to begin.